how are you? This video presents this little accessory that makes a big difference on the trumpet. It's developed by AR Resonance, and it's called First Aid. It's placed on the first slide of the trumpet. How does this work? Basically, when you find the perfect spot on each trumpet, and it can vary a bit, in fact I've marked it here, it changes the frequency to where the trumpet wants to resonate on those notes. So what's going to happen when we find the perfect spot? The notes such as D, E, middle G, high G, all of these notes that are out of tune and that we always have to manipulate the embouchure a bit to raise or lower them, they will go to the correct place, or much closer to the correct place without us having to make that effort. So the articulation will be clearer, and we will play with less effort. Here, to do a basic test, we are going to play the notes C, G, E. I'm going to play honestly. I'm going to play exactly the notes as the trumpet gives me. I could play the notes the way that I have learned to manipulate them since I was very young, but I'm going to play right now what the trumpet gives me. First, let's do it with the first aid put in its place. And now we pull it away like this. Now I've played exactly the same. What happens the second time if I take it off? But what happens? I'm manipulating. I'm spending a lot of energy. And also my notes don't sound the same and resonant because I'm forcing it to resonate in a place where the trumpet really, where that frequency is not the one the trumpet wants to resonate with. So it's like a fight. And what do I get? A tighter sound, a more nasal sound with less resonance. I play again. Then, if I want to articulate the E, for example, without the first aid, I have to articulate it there, raising it, applying effort, and the sound is like this. I'm going to do it again without the first aid. Automatically, my articulation is clearer and I'm expending less effort because the trumpet guides me to the note exactly where it is when I have this little weight in the correct place. This is not a passive tool. It's not a passive accessory that you put on the trumpet, more or less where you see it in a photo, and that's it. By the way, thanks to Tony from AR Resonance, because he sent me these and I tested them for 3 months. I loved them so much that I asked him for one for each trumpet, and I have one on each horn because it was always a bit of a task to change from one trumpet to another. Because you get used to playing with this, you take the trumpet, you forget to put it on, and you start playing and say, what's happened? Something's gone wrong. And suddenly you realize this was not on. It is very important. We are active with this tool. What does that mean? We have to, let's say, re-educate ourselves in the way that we are going to blow the trumpet. You will no longer have to squeeze every time you hit an E. And now without the first aid. Closing down, tightening a little more. We tighten the airstream or the aperture. Each way, it costs us a little more effort, and we have to re-educate ourselves to be able to play these notes in the most relaxed way possible. If it is in its correct place, the notes will fall straight into place. Then we will play in a much more relaxed way. What I don't recommend is buying this just to try it a little, because first you have to have an ear and you have to have a lot of sensitivity. So this is a very helpful tool for a lot of trumpet players. Many can find the placement on their own. Some trumpet players who might not be able to find it can have help finding the exact spot. I've been doing a lot of research and summarized the placement of the notes that help the most with the first aid. It's a little bit different when I use it on a piston. It helps a little bit more, or I feel it in the middle and the higher register. On the German trumpets, I see that it also helps in the middle register, but it helps considerably on the high notes, especially the B, C, and the D. It's going to help a lot. So now, as you see from my graphic, and I will explain, here you see the first line. In the first line, we see the C, the G, and the E. You have the C in green. The first notes in green are, as it says above, the note that we want to play, the real note. The next note that appears is the B, and it appears with a red dot. That means that is where the trumpet has a tendency to resonate towards, lower than the C. So we have to compensate. And where are we going to end up playing? We end up aiming closer to a D flat, which appears here in yellow. The yellow notes are the aim to get the first C that we wanted to hit on green. So that's the effort, extra effort that we are making. Although we get them in tune, we're losing a lot of sound quality. The sound is becoming much more closed, much less resonant, and the trumpet does not sound even. We want the trumpet to sound as balanced as possible on every note. The next G, there you see it in green, that's the note we want to play. I'm going to do a test with the trumpet, remove the first aid. That would be the G that the trumpet gives me without changing anything in the way I play. It's almost an A flat, which is here in red. We have to aim for an F sharp to get this. Then we get used to playing a G, which we have to do a lot, bending downwards, or not as much bending, but forcing it downwards. In the following E, we have it in green. The red is where we're going, which is very low, and yellow is the note we have to aim towards, or the effort that we have to make the note sound in tune. So the first aid will help us to not have to make the extra effort. It will help the notes to be much closer to the intended pitch. It's true that it's not a 100% perfect tool, but it is also true that if you know how to place it, it improves the trumpet because you can move it on each instrument, and it can be used on every single one, rotary trumpets, everything. It's a tool that if you know how to use it, it will improve any of your instruments. Whatever the brand the trumpet might be, my trumpets are top level. And with this tool, it still enhances the instrument and makes less effort. I'll leave you with a graphic of the other notes that I've been investigating. The D, which is very low. First aid solves it quite well. And the G above, with any solo on an orchestra like Pines of Rome, for example, or Ravel, even with a fast articulation in the D and the G, you can see that the D with the first aid is much easier to play. It doesn't sit so low, and you don't have to force it up. And the G from the top is also lower and placed in a more correct area. The F natural there in the picture, which is normally high, is also fixed with the first aid. The A flat is not so low. It's usually quite low. And so it's placed much more correctly. On the last line of the graphic, you can see, especially with the German trumpets that I will upload in the video, you can hear how it affects each note. On the last line, we see these high notes. The B is always very low. The C is low, the D is low, and the E flat with second valve is also low. All those notes are improved and placed a little higher, and they will resonate better. So to play Zarathustra, Don Juan, Mahler II with the repetitive high Bs, All of these things hidden in the development section. It will help us on the E-flat trumpet with all of the high notes. Okay, let's do a test of other notes. I'm going to play a bit of repertoire in this video, and we are going to try the middle E in open position with this tune. That's with the first aid, and it's not at all difficult for me to place that E correctly. Without, you see, I can manipulate it as I normally do. But that note doesn't sound with the same quality. I lose a lot of quality. Now with the first aid, it's kind of like the note E just jumps to the right place. Okay, let's try something else. That was with the first aid. Now without. Okay, I'm honestly playing what the trumpet gives me. As I have said many times, I can bring the notes to their place, but it costs me a lot in work and I lose quality. Again. And now without. I need to spend a lot of energy to lower that G. Well, this has been today's video. I'll create some other videos. I'll play some other repertoire with different trumpets, for example, Zarathustra, with the C trumpet, both rotary and piston. Different repertoire for you to check out and hear how this is helping me. And you can listen. Because if in the end you hear something through the video, which is very difficult, I advise you to listen with headphones. If you hear something through the video, just imagine what you would hear in real life, and imagine what I feel, because I feel a lot more than what comes out. In the end, what sound I'm hearing and the effort that I make to get the sound on the spot is what matters. So as a summary, the first aid will help us to make the notes more in tune. They will resonate much closer to the correct spot, 100%. It is an active tool. We have to be active with the placement. We have to set it on the sweet spot. For example, I was speaking to Tony, and he helped me learn how to place this in the correct area, because at first you might not know how to do it. So, more or less, it's usually moved here. And it's a little bit hard for you to trust yourself. Just play a note, for example, the C. And so we're going to play the same C. We're going to try to get that C to be as high in tuning as possible, the highest and most resonant. I put it here, okay? Remember how that sounded? And I move it a millimeter. Maybe a little better. I move it more. It's already a little higher. I'm going in the right direction. A little more. There it is, higher without the effort. Like this, you go forward until you find the right place. You have to play in a very relaxed way so that the note focuses on the place that the trumpet wants to resonate. And here would be the spot where I had found it before. And I mark it with a marker. But before marking it, I'm going to keep going forward until I find that the C starts to go down in pitch again. We had this before. Going forward. This one feels lower. Maybe you can't hear it in the video, but I can. So I go back to the spot before. There it is. Also, the articulation comes in like a lightning bolt. So that's where I mark with a marker. It's very important that in the beginning you do the movements a bit faster, but as you get closer to the spot where you see that the C is getting higher, you move from millimeter to millimeter, and then half a millimeter, because it's so exponential as you get closer to the sweet spot. Almost anything that you move will change it a lot, and that's why you have to be very careful not to overdo it, not to do it too fast. So I'm going to upload some more videos of myself playing and checking how this fantastic tool works. I highly recommend it. It really helps to find the right spot for the instrument. I also want to thank Tony for sending me this, because when I saw that he had released it, I wrote him and I was very curious. I knew that by changing something in this area of the trumpet, you could get the D to raise up and be a little higher and the G to be a little lower. So I wrote him, and it's great that I wrote him because he explained to me how it worked, and we could talk, make video calls to try it, to really know how to place it in the right location. So I thank him for the trust, and I hope that many more people can benefit from this tool, and you can use it well, that you can use it to be able to play in a more relaxed way by finding the perfect spot. Goodbye.